I'm so sorry, Monica.
No worries, no worries at all. I'm on a day off anyways. Not really not been doing anything interesting to be honest, so it's not a problem at all.
So basically, I mean, I overslept.
Oh, did you have a late? Did you have a late night last night?
Yeah, yeah. And normally because my brain works that way. Today is the only day. I don't know what happened. Just like
It's absolutely fine.
just perhaps the weather, or
Yeah, it's really grey out there. I'm just kind of looking out of the window. It's not a really pleasant day, to be honest. It's been pouring down.
dark gray.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's Scotland for you. I don't know why we're even like surprised.
and in my household, everyone was sleeping as well because everyone is on a holiday.
Ah, of course.
So no one bothered to wake me up.
So when are you going back to work?
Um, because the teaching is not starting before mid-January.
Hmm.
And so basically, no, we're not going back before 15. But we have to do lots of stuff before that.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you have to prepare.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So you've got a bit more left, so you can get kind of catch up on your sleep and other things.
I really struggle with my sleep. I mean,
Oh no.
so it's just like random, sometimes I sleep like unusual hours and sometimes
Yeah, I think that's the worst, isn't it? Because I cannot do anything about sleep. I am such a grumpy person. Every time I've not had enough sleep, I am like the worst. So I try to make sure I do get a good night's sleep.
Mm. Sometimes, like some people just need that, like 8 hours sleep,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
can operate. So I think during this like lockdown thing, because we are academics, no, so we don't have those set timetable like 9 to 5 thing. So
Yeah.
I think our life is totally, gone.
Yeah, no, I can imagine because I think it's been difficult for so many people getting used to this, especially also doing kind of the hybrid thing of working from home or like fully working
Mm,
from home or just doing half and half going to the office for a bit. I think it's going to be really difficult coming back full time
mm,
because the way I structured my day is like I wake up a bit later, than I would in the past because obviously I have extra time in the morning. I don't have to travel
mm,
anywhere. So yeah, I think it's going to be such a pain when we come back to normal, if you want to call it that.
mm,
But hey, let's not worry about it now. It doesn't seem
mm.
like we're anywhere close to this ending anyway. So I think like all of us kind of have really found ourselves in such a bizarre situation like the last year and a half that we've been
Yeah.
discovering things about our lives that, kind of things have come to the surface, I suppose, that just previously you would ignore a lot of things. But yeah.
I mean, like me and my colleague here, like, I mean, he's an economist. So he lives very close by. So I'm trying to document our lives over this like whole pandemic. I mean,
Ah,
just
cool.
the way we changed as well, like it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. So
Yeah.
his sleeping pattern just like gone totally out of the window. So he sleeps like 7 a.m. So I really need to take care of him as well when I cannot take care of
Yeah.
myself. So
It sounds like a definitely a difficult task, but I think that's what kind of also discovered with some of my friends throughout the pandemic that kind of we've been supporting one another, even
mm,
though we're far away or we
mm,
couldn't really meet in person. Like thank God for all those like Zoom calls and Messenger and Skype and all that because I think it has been a lifesaver, especially for those people with families abroad as well, families really far away. Even like in the past, they would not be able to go to that down south. Like
mm,
you had their family in the UK, but you would not even be able to travel
mm,
to England. So I think it's just been such a bizarre
mm,
time
I mean, I haven't seen you since
since I graduated. I think it must have been
2000.
around 8 and a half years ago, something.
Wow.
like that. Yeah, so it's been a while.
Because of the social media, I mean, you are just there. And I think that's the best part of social media, So like we don't lose our people from our lives totally. So it's not like, you just totally forgotten. And sometimes I saw you in like Facebook. So you just remained what you were like 8 years ago.
I know. Well, things have moved on, but yeah, no, definitely, I do agree with it. Because I went on Erasmus and I worked in a few different countries. I think LinkedIn and Facebook have been really helpful in making sure I kind of stayed in touch with people, even followed them, maybe not really kind of that closely, but still had them somewhere in the background. So I think that has really helped with all those connections and like friendships I've made. I think especially during my Erasmus year, and also when I did kind of a couple of traineeships in EU agencies. So that has been such a great thing. Having the social media really has been.
So like, how long you have been in Edinburgh so far?
I think I moved still. Yeah, I moved to Edinburgh when I was in my final. I think it was the final year at university. So I moved out of Dundee because my husband, he moved to Edinburgh, or boyfriend at that time. So he moved to Edinburgh, and I moved with him, and I traveled to Dundee actually to finish my kind of final year. So I think that must have been in 2012. So I've been, and I think I moved to Scotland in 2009. So it's been actually a pretty long time now. Thinking about it, I have lived in Scotland for such a long time. I don't really remember like pretty much all my adult life I lived here. So I can't really see myself anywhere else. So I've not really seen Dundee. I think I visited Dundee I think just like a few months ago, and it's impressive how much has changed. Kind of all the kind of waterfront stuff and all the cultural stuff. I think it's changed dramatically over the last 8 years.
Dundee spent £1 billion,
and you can tell, like it's you can see that when you go there. It's a huge difference.
Huge difference. Which is good in a sense, but also, all those urbanization, gentrification. So those things are involved there. So there are other stories.
Absolutely. The same in Edinburgh. Like, I think it's you have, areas that are really nice and kind of clean and, everything is looking great. And you have other areas that are, it's just a completely different world. And it's just so bizarre to see that clash in Edinburgh. I think for me, that was the biggest, what made it really difficult to understand is that you had a capital where you had so many different environments, like completely different situations people were in, socioeconomically speaking, really. It's such a clash. But I think that they will be even more so in some cases, isn't it? Because I remember it being kind of some areas being pretty rough and some being really nice and kind of
this like divide, north-south divide. So
absolutely, definitely
push the poor people out of the center. But I mean, like living in Edinburgh is such a joy, isn't it?
Yes, I really enjoyed it. I think there's so much to do, and it's just such a beautiful city. So many cultures as well. I think it's so multicultural, which I really like about it. And there's just always something to do. Although I've kind of very recently moved just kind of outside of Edinburgh, so I think like 2 or 3 months ago. I moved out, but I still, obviously kind of still go for work to Edinburgh, travel there to meet friends and stuff. But I definitely would recommend it as a good place to live. And it just also kind of job wise, I think, because there's so many opportunities in Edinburgh, it is a bit bigger. And you do have those various organisations. We have loads of kind of Scottish government offices. You have Scottish Parliament. we have all those different kind of agencies and the private sector, the banking sector. So definitely, I think a good place.
I saw you have a dog, big dog.
Yeah, I have a German Shepherd Akita Inu cross. I think probably won't be able to see it behind me, but there's like a picture somewhere that like far, far away on the shelf of my dog with her 2 dog friends. So yeah, she's definitely my baby. She's 11 years old, so she's
yes, it's been there for some time.
Yeah, I got her in Dundee. Actually, she's a Dundonian dog. She doesn't have an accent though, but what can I do?
I can see you have some accent, Scottish accent.
I don't know about it. I have a bit of a weird mix situation going on, I think, but I've always had a weird mix of, I think there's a bit of like an American thing going on there as well, because some of the words I pronounce, which has to do with me watching a lot of TV shows, basically, I think. But I think I picked up a bit of Scottish, but I don't think there's any Dundonian there left. Although I lived in Dundee for 3 years, I think, altogether. But still, it's too difficult to pick up.
How much we can talk about your job situation?
Well, I suppose I should start by saying that obviously I'm here in a personal capacity, not speaking on behalf of my employer. So that's kind of just to make that clear.
I mean, can I call you that you are actually a civil servant?
Yes. I think I'm allowed to say that yes, I am a civil servant. Obviously, I have to abide by the civil service code. So it's not really I can't share everything, I suppose. But I think. I thought it will be quite useful maybe for listeners, maybe especially some of your students who are thinking about what they kind of want to do after they graduate. I could maybe talk about how to get into the civil service, could maybe mention some of the other opportunities, things that I think have helped me develop and kind of gain that experience in order to get the civil service job, and just kind of, and maybe could talk for a bit about what kind of I've been up to for the last 5 years while being basically a civil servant.
But also, like, I mean, I'll try to get your story as well, your journey. Will that be okay?
Yeah, that's obviously fine. It's a pretty I think unusual one that I have.
That's okay. Like, because everyone's story is different. Everyone's story is distinct and also fascinating. Like, I mean, when I ask like my guests that tell us about their earliest memories growing up in like Copenhagen, or for me like in places like Bangladesh, it's like fascinating. We always cherish our earliest memories. Can you tell us some of your earliest memories?
So I was so just kind of for context, I was born and raised in Poland, and I was actually not far from the border with Germany, probably like an hour drive. And I'm from a small town called Miedzyrzecz, very difficult to pronounce. So earliest memories are just kind of a very happy childhood. Spent a lot of time with my grandfather. Actually, he's always been kind of a very, very important person to me. He's a historian, actually, or mostly kind of, I suppose, a history teacher. So he did kind of mostly teaching with years and years of experience. And I always remember kind of spending a lot of time with him. And him reading books to me, some of them kind of historical books. It's not exactly sure if I enjoyed it as when I was just a few years old, but definitely remember spending a lot of time at one of the allotments. I think he had with both of my grandparents, they had an allotment. I really do remember kind of it as being really quiet, kind of family focused childhoods, but I don't really remember that much, to be honest. Mostly, I think it is that kind of how our brain works, isn't it? That you mostly focus on maybe just like the key events. So I think mostly what I remember is kind of, high school times and like from then. But my childhood is just something kind of nice and warm and like a long time ago, I suppose.
When do you think, this idea about, the world, the people kind of, started building up in your brain, and then what you will be in future? Is it from the school or from your grandparents as well?
I think it will mostly be because of my grandparents, actually. Although school, had something to do with it as well. I was always interested in languages. So when I remember actually the first foreign language I was learning was German, wasn't English. I think I started learning English when I was around maybe like 15, 16. So German was really predominantly kind of a foreign language I'll learn at school. And I would also take like private lessons because I was really into it. I really liked it. And I remember hearing about this program, which was an exchange program, a cooperation between a Polish and a German governments. And basically what they had was this project where Polish students or pupils, they would go to a German high school and they would basically like cross the border every day to go to school. And then they would like take lessons like as a normal German student would in a normal German high school. So when I heard about this, and I was really keen to get that. So I think I must have been like maybe around 10 or 11, and I was really, really keen to apply for that. So I've been kind of working hard since then to learn German. And when I was like, I think 14 or something like that, I applied and I was accepted at the that program. So for 3 or 4 years, I've just basically been, most of the time I've been crossing the border every day to go to school. And I think that's when most of my ideas about the European Union, like other cultures, that's when they started developing. And that's when I kind of thought, actually, I want to be a European citizen. I like the idea of being someone would call it a citizen of nowhere. I would call it a citizen of everywhere. And I really enjoyed that idea of learning in a foreign language, studying in a foreign country. So I think that's what really convinced me that I really needed to apply for, to study abroad as well. After I finished German high school, I was very keen. I didn't want to go back to Poland. I thought, okay, let's try something else. Let's see even more of the world, I suppose.
Did you find any particular teachers did some amazing thing for
I had a couple of pretty amazing ones. Actually, one of them, now thinking about it, one was in Poland before, in primary school, and I remember her very well. She would always be very encouraging, very, very good listener. Would encourage us to read a lot, would take us on trips. I remember she was one of those, like some teachers, they just get kind of, they are there to do the work and to teach you, but I think that's it for them. Like that, being in class is basically what they think is their job should be. And, that's it. But I think she would take us on weekend trips to museums and, to opera and things like that. I think that I can still remember her being one of the best, really, teachers I've had, because you could develop not only in class, but also outside. And you would learn how to, I think being from a small town, especially, she was aware that people who are from a small town, they don't get to go to opera or theater because it's basically not that. I don't think we even had could go to see a movie in my town. I think now they have theater there, but they didn't at the time. So you really had to go outside. You had to get into a bus with your whole, all of your pupils, the whole class, and get out there. And I think she encouraged that. And that did open my eyes as well to a lot of things. And in the German high school, I also had one teacher who was just again, someone who would just be very encouraging and very good listener. I think those are the two things I really look for in any teacher. I think those good listening skills and just being patient with people as well, it really makes you respect them.
For me, like I've got so many, this kind of memories with my school teachers. Sometimes I feel that I need to go back to them and then just say thank you.
Yeah, actually, this is how it feels. I lost all the contacts really with both of those teachers. I don't have no idea where they are, but I think it's something that I've been seeing in my grandfather. So because he was teacher for 40 years, he literally has his former students coming to visit him even now, and he obviously finished teaching. That must have been, like over 20 years ago. And he still has people knocking on his door and being like, "Oh, hello, so nice to see you. Can we have a chat?" That's what I think is just, this kind of shows you the type of teacher, if I were a teacher, this is what I would want to be like. Someone who then, 20 years later has people coming to him and being like, "Oh, thank you so much for taking your time with me when I was at school." So you're right. I'm glad that there are people like that who do find their teachers and come back and thank them. I'm not one of those, unfortunately, but it would be nice to really tell them how much you appreciated them, because I think they do play a huge part, a big role in our lives.
I think part of me, I also think in other way as well. So I myself is a teacher. I try to go back to my students.
Yeah.
and try to find, I'm not sure, I think that gives me some kind of meaning to my life, to my profession, whatever it is. You always there. People like you, you have been always there in my memories. And I always think that I can always come back to you. And then, when I sent a small message, and I saw you responded very quickly, because it's just, we are always there, our relationship,
absolutely.
There's a, I'm not sure what's the right word. It's there's a grace there. There is something wholesome, something really wholesome. And
you do spend a lot of at the university. You do spend. I don't know what it's like now, and I suppose you can tell me a bit more about what it's like during COVID. But I remember my time at Dundee. You would spend a lot of time, doing seminars and just spending quite a good few hours a week, especially at a politics program. With your lectures. So I think you do develop those relationships and you do remember things. And if you have someone that's, easy to work with, easy to learn from, I think that makes it so much more interesting, to actually study. So you're right. It is a bit of because I still remember you from the time at Dundee. There are a few other, lectures I had, but I don't remember them as much or as well as I do you. So that kind of shows you as well that, those relationships, the not all of them have been developed that well, I suppose. And some of them are basically, they've developed much more for some reason, whatever that is, when I was at the university. And it doesn't feel like 8 years at all.
No. Because that's really important for me, to find some kind of meaning out of this all meaninglessness. Because part of me, I read quite a bit of throughout my life, this existential, philosophy, or this. So my favorite dramas are, all those absurd dramas by Samuel Beckett or Brecht. It's like waiting for Godot. There is no Godot here, so you have to extract something out of this, serious meaninglessness, this small life we live, and suddenly, just passed away.
Time flies, and if it's, I think there is more meaning to life than just kind of working and just doing your job and then forgetting about, past. I think you can learn so much as well from other people. That's what I've been really valued that throughout my life. I think and also from sometimes, it's difficult to get that constructive feedback from someone, but I think that's the only way to learn. That's how I feel like I've learned most from most challenging conversations I had, but also from those conversations that are just about, exploring, actually making you think back. So questions you ask me, so what's your earliest memory? It's not something you would normally think about every day, but sometimes it's nice to stop, kind of sit back and have a think about it, actually.
This professional, this ladder, you have to get promotion and all those things.
Yeah.
I mean, those things don't excite me anymore. I really want to spend time with this planet, with the people, So every day, if the sun shines, I try to go out and try to embrace, this sky, blue sky. And I'm trying to trying to document those things as well. So the photography is part of that story. I never thought, I would do this kind of podcast. Never. Now,
is it because of lockdown? Is that why you started?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I started in this April. These are historical documents, basically, how we lived our life during this lockdown.
Yeah.
So I think as long as the lockdown or this kind of pandemic situation stays, I think I have to live with this because this is one of my way out from this doom, because we are going through some serious stuff right now, and lots of people don't understand what does it mean. But I saw what happened to my friends, to my family members. Some people died very young as well. So, for me, this is a gift, still alive, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We still don't fully understand the impact it's going to have on us. And I keep reminding myself that, even kind of when I'm sad, that actually doing pretty well, given the circumstances we're in. Really, we've all been, or most of us have been coping amazingly well with what's happening. And I always come back to that, kind of being an immigrant, I suppose, and not having my family close to me. I mean, that was such a difficult situation to be in. And I obviously, there are people here who have family, again, not that far, but they couldn't meet with them. But I think there's something about that in your head when you think about the miles, how far away, how many miles it is actually that are between you and your family, that there's this something that kind of makes you really scared and worried. If they're, thousands of miles away, you kind of, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy to get to them if something happens to them. You won't be able to spend time with them. You won't be able to help. So I think that's been just such a difficult thing to think about, especially as someone who's used to traveling. I think in 2019 up to March 2020, I traveled maybe 10 to 12 times. I would travel, once every month and a half, I would travel abroad. And that was really obviously something I completely stopped in 2020. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock.
Last time I traveled is 2019, December. I was in Stockholm last time, and that's the last journey I did. I mean,
that is just crazy when you think about it.
It's almost like we are heading for 3 years now.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Because with me, those travels are not only research travels or conference travels, but also it's a way out to have my own space, own time, And those things are so important, so important.
Absolutely. And I think what I'm worried most about is maybe not for myself, but for younger people. I think I learned so much from being around other cultures and just taking that week, or it was a holiday or something else, and I would go sightseeing, listening, just spend a bit of time amongst people who are not like me, if a completely different culture, speak a completely different language. And I think this is when I learned most. And I think young people right now, they don't have the same opportunities. And I think it's a huge loss, something that you cannot replace, even if you were to do loads of Zoom calls with, international people. It's not the same. So I feel really sad for all those students right now who don't have a normal, they can't go in a year, or a semester abroad, or they can't go on a trip abroad to experience all that.
So your story is about, the world just opens up in front of you. It's a beautiful way to live your life. You are crossing your border, going to Germany to do your schools, and you can travel anywhere seamlessly. And then, we try to stop those things. What's this? It's almost like self-inflicting kind of, human existence.
Yes, I think that's the biggest. That's why I think about borders all the time, because when I was in high school, I think the first 2 or 3 years, Poland was not in Schengen. So I would need to, when I was crossing the border, I would literally need to show my passport to a guy wearing a green uniform and ask to be let through the border. So that was a bit of a kind of bizarre thing that I got used to very quickly. But then what I got used to even quicker was when one day Poland joined Schengen, and I was able to just go through it, no passport, just, literally cross all of the infrastructure, taken away. I was just crossing the border, which was a completely seamless border. So I remember the feeling I had. I think I actually cried. This is a bizarre thing, because I don't think I fully understood. I think I was maybe 16 or no, it must have been 17 or 18. And I don't think I fully understood why it had such a big meaning to me. But I think the way I must have seen it when I was a teenager was I felt like Poland was getting closer to, the European Union. And I was now a part of a bigger community of nations, if it makes sense. So I felt really privileged, and I felt it was such a big deal to me. And I kind of started taking it for granted. And the last, 10 years, or however many, actually 15 years, I've been really taking it kind of for granted. And now when the pandemic hit, things have changed, and then they started closing the borders. And now you have a situation in Poland as well, the external border of the EU, with all those asylum seekers there, who are basically there in a winter time, freezing conditions on the Belarusian border. So and obviously we're closing borders because of COVID as well. It is a bizarre, extremely sad experience, and I just wish it would stop, really.
That's one of my story this semester. I have this student from Poland, and she was staying in Poland, so I had to do online session with her. But she's such a good girl, and so much ethics and moral things in her life. It really worried me, because she lives in that town which is close to this Belarus border.
Oh, really? Wow.
More or less from her window, she can sense what's going on there. And she was really, she felt so much pain, and that why we are doing these things. I mean, why we want to punish people. I mean, who are these people that we want to punish? Are they different? Do they have different kind of feelings? Do they have children? Do they, treat their children the same way we do? Or these are just bunch of animals, So you have to decide. This is the mindset. So then you get, if you can have that understanding that these are actually not people, these are animals, then you can take that position that no, I don't care.
I think it's just very difficult for people to understand because most of us have never been in that situation. And I think it's so easy to forget. It's so easy to forget that actually some of our, actually my great grandparents are like in a similar situation, or well, maybe not. It's just quite difficult to compare those things. But when you think about the Second World War, all those concentration camps and work camps, and a horrible situation in Poland at the time. I think it wasn't actually that long. When I think about it, it wasn't that long ago, but it's just so forgotten so quickly. And even though some of those people who have very strong views about it, their great grandparents might have been, in very difficult situations where they had to ask for other nations for help. They had to try and cross borders illegally. They had to run. Even grandparents, actually, or their great grandparents, they had to run. Some of the Poles immigrated to the US, and they were welcomed at the time because of the communist regime. They had to run, and they managed to get through. They managed to make their lives somewhere else in other countries. I think it wasn't that long ago, and it's so quickly forgotten. So it's definitely a very, I think, huge subject discussion in Poland right now, and there's so many differing views about that situation at the border.
But also, I think it's a kind of bizarre time. We can have people like Trump as global leader, top leader. Brazil, India, UK, just like the amount of countries are sliding towards that path. I mean, when we actually gone through that path just recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And people forget how many things have actually changed over the last 2 or 3 years. It's not only COVID. Obviously had Brexit as well, which is a huge change for the UK. We had Trump for so many years, actually, and so there's a lot of things that have been thrown at the world at a very relatively short period of time, I would say. And I don't think we fully understand the impacts it's had on everyone.
Do you follow Polish politics a bit?
Unfortunately, I think because mostly also because of my job, I had to follow Scottish politics and actually British politics quite a lot. I don't think there's any space left for me to follow Polish politics. I only know kind of bits and kind of pieces of it, so I don't think I wouldn't call myself an expert. I definitely feel like I'm much more aware of what's happening in the UK politically speaking, especially because the last couple of years, because of my job, I had to make sure I was really fully aware of everything that was happening. So it's quite funny because I remember when you were teaching at university, I think you would tell us, remember, read the news, like this is a big thing, study politics, you have to read the news, you need to make sure you read newspapers. And I remember at the time I was like, I would do like the basic stuff, like, okay, yeah, I'll have the basic information, but I wouldn't really be that into it, which is really, really weird. So I was into the degree, it was interesting, but I wasn't really, I remember some students literally having a paper, like reading 2-3 papers a day. I wasn't one of those people. And then it's quite funny because when I got my first job at Scottish government, this is when I started getting interested, really. And I literally started being on, looking at the news every day, 10 times a day, which is such a bizarre thing because I should have been doing it during my studies, but then it kind of caught up with me only, years later, really. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on Polish politics, so
that's okay.
Disappointing. Sorry.
Okay. But I mean, we can see so we can see there's a pattern there. It's not only Poland. Lots of countries are going through this, I don't know, there's some kind of, I can call it like psychosis, we just not sure. We just suddenly we thought that, we just cannot take care of ourselves.
I would agree. And you see as many countries as we have, and as many approaches basically to the pandemic. So it's not even that, I suppose we have a handful of countries doing similar things and another handful doing something similar as well. But I don't think you would be able to really compare any two, because everyone has their own thing going on. And even when you look at the European Union as a whole, those countries, they have had opposing views. I don't think they've been exactly, a kind of a one same front and a same front type of situation. They've been actually doing completely different things. And I think it has to do, in Poland especially, it has to do with culture, because there is this kind of, in people's heads, at least the way I see it, you don't really want to agree. I think because of communism and all that kind of history, people don't really trust the institutions in Poland. They don't want to agree to follow the rules at all times because of who's setting those rules. Because again, there's a lack of trust in institutions. So I think it's been very difficult in Poland to enforce some of those regulations. And obviously there's another very big thing which has to do with vaccination. When you look at Scotland, huge levels of vaccinations. People really trust the government. They want to get the vaccine as soon as possible. In Poland, that's complete opposite. You have half the population, not even half are fully vaccinated. So I think that's the biggest difference here, but it has to do with how people, it has to do with history, basically, kind of trust issue.
But also part of the problem is this is self-inflicting situation. So you want to make yourself suffer more.
Maybe. That's an interesting way of looking at it.
But it's really, also very, it's kind of very biblical or religious setting. You have to go through this suffering to redeem yourself.
Yeah, no. Actually, maybe there's something about that. One of my friends said this quite funny thing about how our brains work, and how Polish brains work, if you can call it this way. And he said, listen, if they told you couldn't have the vaccine, people would be queuing for it. But because they told you must have it, nobody wants it. So I think this is just kind of a this reverse psychology thing should have been used. I feel in Poland now it is what it is. I don't know how to convince people to get vaccinations. It's something I'm concerned about.
Problem with the science is, science is not straightforward. Science is not all black and white. It has got more complexities. But the problem is the human brains, the way it works. It wants simplicity. Simple. Give me a simple thing. And then, if 50% people, got this idea that vaccines are actually dangerous. Just dangerous, just word dangerous. That's it. Simple. I'll not take it. No.
I want to live in a country where you kind of felt like you're forced, really forced. You had no choice. I would want people to do something. I would want people to have that choice, but I would want them to make the right decision, which is quite difficult. I have high expectations.
Mm, mm. No, like when I was talking to the scientist, I mean, he was really worried because some of the things are, it's like collective. I mean, if you exclude yourself, you are actually harming other. So your freedom will affect someone else's freedom. And then I asked him this question about, like, would you allow unvaccinated care workers to work in a, care setting? And he says, no. But I can see the politics behind it. Some people say that, I mean, why not? But the problem is, did you see, it's not only your freedom or your
people's freedom, as well, and that's the key.
How to like reconcile these two things? I mean, you are involved in like some kind of public policy stuff as well as urban. Like this is like, I think I can talk about this. This is quite fascinating story. There's a like Harvard professor in economics. He done these things on poverty and then it kind of behaviors. He actually got Nobel Prize with his wife, both. So they worked in the remote part of India where the vaccination, like polio vaccine or malaria vaccine, the people, are not keen to take vaccine. Lots of, theories there. But also we are talking about these people are seriously disadvantaged from education, from all kind of things. But what they try to do, so they created this like 2 sample clinics. Okay, one clinic will just offer vaccine, and the other clinic will offer vaccine plus 1 kilo rice for each family who comes to take the vaccine. But that will make the cost a bit costly business.
Yeah.
But what they found that in the long term, actually the camp which provided extra rice or extra money, extra thing, they actually make more sense in terms of economy. Yeah. And you can see like the both camps had to hire similar number of people.
Yeah.
So basically the cost is almost like similar. So with the one which are getting very least number of like vaccinated people, the other has got serious uptake of this like vaccination, so like 80 to 90%. The other one is like 20%. So in the long run, if you cover all those like economic cost of like this like vaccination thing, you can say that, oh my god, this really works. So any kind of incentive will work. I mean, why you cannot do that kind of stuff?
I suppose the answer is that you can, like, but I suppose it just depends on kind of the policy you're developing or looking at. But I think it's a great example because in every time you make policies, I feel like there's so much to consider, and it's so difficult. Like I suppose, how do you test things, right? Like if you're introducing something, in some cases you can't really test. If you can't make huge mistakes, basically, because it could cost you a lot. With COVID, could cost you lives, actual people's lives. But it's an interesting approach to that kind of economic incentive, adding that something maybe that they could think of in Poland or or places that are struggling with level of vaccinations.
So like if you combine science with economy, can work better.
I totally agree. And that's why I think, kind of all the jobs, most of the jobs I did at the government, they always have advisors and experts involved. But also not only that, also I think stakeholders, kind of people on the ground. I think that's what I've seen quite a lot, when they're developing various policies. They would always ask for advice, whether it was more theoretical, it was kind of focused on mostly on theory things, but also more practical, because things that work in theory also will not necessarily work in practice, as you will know yourself. So I think that listening to those voices, all the different voices, helps so much to make the right decisions. I think I really valued those conversations I had with experts, because they ultimately, what is quite an interesting thing about the civil service and civil servants is that a lot of us are, we're not experts on a specific area. We're very, well, we know a lot of stuff about like various things, I suppose. There's not like one area, at least most of us, because we move a lot within the government. Once you get in, you are able to, so many opportunities that you can apply for jobs, and whether it's, could be health, education, transport, justice, all those different places, and you didn't really have experience or knowledge of those things, but you would have general skills that are needed to help develop policies, such as engagement with stakeholders, communication skills, teamwork, so developing contacts and such. So all big parts of. And I remember someone told me once about kind of the smoking ban policy. Yeah. Introduced in Scotland. Obviously, that was introduced like years ago. I remember it was actually being introduced when I was not long after I moved to Scotland. So it must have been it's been a long time now. And I remember someone was talking about how they were like developing this policy and how they had to take so many things under consideration. One of those was that if you ban smoking in public places, it could move into people's homes. And if it moves into people's homes, it could have an impact on children. So that was one of the things they did to address it. I remember was they had awareness raising campaign about how inhaling smoke by young children could have a huge impact on their health. It's something that kind of is obvious, but then like you really have, when you're developing policy, you have to think of those things. This is the impact. This is a great policy, but what could go wrong? What could be something that what we could inadvertently do, just accidentally do, to cause issues somewhere else? So all difficult to come up with those things. But I think your rice idea of vaccinations is such a brilliant one, actually. Wouldn't work everywhere though, but because part of me, like I came from a very left politics kind of background, so you still, if you go to my office, you will still see Karl Marx there in the big poster. Lenin is there. You'll also see like Rosa Luxemburg as well, one of my all-time favorite. Part of me also think that the crisis is linked with capitalism. So the crisis always helps the people with capitals. There's a famous quote by U.S. Treasury Secretary during the interwar period, Andrew Mellon. He was so powerful. He was so rich. They could not get rid of him, even after Wall Street crash. So he was serving as Treasury Secretary for like three presidents. And his famous quote is, "The crisis is always good, because in a crisis, the assets always come back to its original owner, i.e. him." I see.
So the people, so you can see, so there's a serious divide. Perhaps the divide is important for the people who has got assets, who has got the capitals, because they can increase their assets. This is the time. This is the good time. So if you look at that, the most of the companies who actually benefited from this crisis are actually all those biggest companies. So their wealth, became like from 200 million to like 1 trillion now. So it's a big thing. It's a global thing. Yeah. But we are not giving space and time to the experts. We are just going back to the politics, and then that's more toxic. And then we are losing time, we are losing resources, we are losing people. It's not helping. So what it's doing is making things more protracted.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's so difficult, isn't it, to actually to completely move this aside, politics aside. I think because I'm not sure people kind of will ever allow that to happen. So people have very strong views about, how the pandemic should be handled and what restrictions should or should not be imposed, and how people who should behave. I don't think you will ever be able to actually have, separate. If you impose certain rules, will people actually follow them? So maybe that's not really politics, but that's thinking about people's behaviors, which actually derive from the way they think, and maybe their political affiliations, and also they, core values and cultural beliefs and things like that. So I think it's such a difficult job, isn't it, for any government during a pandemic to make right decisions and to implement new policies.
But I mean, I'm not sure whether you can agree with this. My position is either you have to rely on, or you have to have trust on the experts, or make the society extremely well educated. So that means you have to spend serious amount of money to, for those investment to make a very smart, up-to-date society about science, about, everything, basically.
I think you have to do both, because especially things
we cannot do the both, because it's
yeah, you cannot do it to full extent. But what when you talk about educating people, I suppose educating people, the way I see it is you could try to continue to raise awareness. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to mean that they'll completely change their minds. But yeah, if you try to raise awareness, whether it's through some kind of social media campaign or, things that are, updates that the government is giving in the media, I think it does hopefully make a difference. Some people, I don't know who's watching those, to be honest,
but I mean, with me, that's the cheap version.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I suppose it has to do with prioritizing as well. People, can't do everything, as you say. But the education that you're talking about, I wonder if it's something that has to be done over a long period of time, over the years.
So did you see, so we ended up with this situation because of things we did in the past.
Yeah. Yes.
So I mean, there's no quick fix with this kind of thing. So you have to have those commitment and the investment beyond politics. But the way we are seeing the politics, I mean, I've been teaching this year, so I'm trying to bring lots of my own personal experiences as well. What we are seeing now in the world, lots of managers are coming to the forefront to do things, to manage things, rather than, leadership, rather than, do something something really, really, revolutionary. Because the managing thing is easy. So I was talking about, Israel-Palestine thing. So over the years, what we saw, just a bunch of managers. So Netanyahu or whoever, Palestinian side, they became just managers. They just manage things, just small conflict, then a couple of days flared up, and then, try to negotiate, and then ceasefire, and then goes on and on. But the problem is the real problem remains. And to solve that, you need serious amount of commitment, leadership, and also sacrifice as well, because there's a serious risk, physical risk as well. Whoever does the piece, he will be or she will be at risk, physical risk there. But, we are not seeing those things. And then we are ending up with this kind of serious protracted situation around the world. Whether you talk about peace, conflict situation, or talk about climate change politics, or current this COVID situation, what we are seeing is just a bunch of managers are trying to manage things rather than, deliver something.
Yeah, it's difficult to kind of address the core problems, I suppose, quickly. But I don't really have, I suppose, the knowledge of, kind of Scottish education or how people are raised, because I've only lived here for a few years. But I remember that most of the things my upbringing, like what really mattered a lot, and most of my core values actually come from my upbringing and the time I spent in school. So I wonder if, when I think about, making a real impact and changing the way people think and shaping how people think, I always think about school times. And I wonder if this is where we should start, really. But I think it's such a difficult thing in today's world, because when you think about it, social media and internet in general plays such a huge part in how people think. I actually wonder if school is not as important as it used to be, because I think people probably spend more time online than at school. So is there another way of, how do you control the internet and what messages people see? There's no way of couldn't censor internet, right? Like, we're not one of those countries. So just interesting to see how we're going to address the issue of people being brought up in this world, like kind of this internet heavy world, and how they influence that. I have no idea.
And it seems like lots of people are getting educated from what they're listening or watching, and then they become expert as well, and then say things. I mean,
absolutely, I've seen, and also now, because you're able to, because we do a lot of work online, and because a lot of people do it from their own homes. And as you found yourself doing this podcast because that's something you felt you really wanted to do because of the pandemic. I'm pretty sure there will be, hundreds of thousands of people who are doing something they never thought they would, and sharing their knowledge and expertise and ideas online. I actually think it is the future of education. And it's nice to have it so accessible as well. Some people don't really wouldn't have access, to education in the same way. And now with the internet, I think I wouldn't mind actually doing another degree, kind of maybe not 100%, maybe not 100% online, but like maybe even like 70% online.
But also, I think one of the biggest outcome from this COVID and lockdown situation is, it's just like it's like necessity, kind of mother of all inventions. The people are thinking of something else, because our lives become so miserable. How to find some kind of joys out of these things. So obviously, internet plays a big role here. So lots of idea you can generate, which can also generate resources for you, like even like livelihood, even just simple ideas, get ideas and then do something. And I think that's really important, because otherwise the whole world will be controlled by just like 4 or 5 companies, big multinational companies, and that's really worrying. So I really want this like local kind of community where people can thrive within these like small compartmentalized kind of communities, rather than in the whole thing. So like everything sometimes looks like for us who are in the Western world, it's all about White House or like Whitehall or like European Union or like China. But what about other things happening around the world? What about Thailand? What about Myanmar, Ethiopia, or like Horn of Africa? Suddenly, lots of blind spots for us.
Or Ukraine,
or Ukraine,
that's closer to home. But it's no, I think it is easier to focus on those very big things that everyone. I suppose someone shaping that agenda, right? Whoever that is, we kind of all, whether we read, listen to, it's always the same things. But I do think I found myself I've been doing this kind of co-chairing this thing at the government called the EU Nationals Network. It's like a staff network for EU staff members. That's kind of we've been doing events for people, whether it's events about citizens' rights after Brexit, or how we can apply for UK citizenship, or what your rights really are, or just well-being sessions for people. I've been doing those, we've had this network since 2016 or 2017. And I noticed the last year and a half since the pandemic started, we've been able to do so much more for our members because we've all been working remotely. Because Scottish Government has offices in all those different locations, Glasgow, Edinburgh, but it's also Inverness, Aberdeen, all those different locations. And we have members from basically living all over kind of Scotland. And every time we had an event, someone would be excluded, right? Because we could have most of the events we would have, to be honest, they would have them in the Central Belt. Because I would be helping with them, and it was just difficult to organize them somewhere else. And what I've noticed the last 2 years is I've been able to do so many virtual events attended by 100 people from all those different locations, and I think that's helped to build that community, and also to address that key issue of location. Location used to be such a huge issue. Now it's not an issue anymore. I even know some people who moved farther away, moved out of Edinburgh, farther away somewhere, because they are now working from home, and they will be for the foreseeable future. And it doesn't matter really where they are working from. So, and having those open conversations also with members of my network about how they feel about the impact of the pandemic on their relationships with family, and how there's a member of a network who lost a few family members due to COVID, and they were not able to visit them. They were unable to travel, and so all those different stories, we were all going through the same thing, and we were able to just be on a call together to discuss that and to share those experiences. And I think that is what makes, because of internet, because of those tools, that's kind of what helped us build that community and make it a bit more inclusive as well.
Because the problem is, I kind of give this example, during the Second World War in America, when all the men went to the war. So the female members of the families who used to take care of the kitchen and the family household things, suddenly they were told that you have to come out and work in the offices because there is no one there to take care of the offices. The problem is, when the war is over, they did not go back to the kitchen again. So that's the paradigm shift. Society changed forever. Do you think society will be changed in a drastic way? And
I had interesting question.
but also I think that part of the problem is, you just cannot put a timeline with this pandemic that this will finish in summer next year. We don't know.
No, it's a really interesting point, because I originally kind of thought things would change, so much, and it would be impossible to go back to kind of the old. There'll be just the new normal we would have. But then, when I kind of last year and a half, so I worked mostly from home. But some parts of my jobs I had to do from the office. So I had to go physically into the office, because I had no other choice basically but to work from the office, whether it was something to do with, printing stuff and just kind of some kind of the physical parts that you just have to do. And it was quite interesting to see, because I kind of watched at the beginning of the pandemic, when, I'd go in sometimes and was completely deserted. It was really was really a very small group of people in office. And then, as we kind of progressed through the pandemic, you would get a bit more. You'd still have big limits in offices. I don't know if it was like in a private sector, but in public sector, you really are really careful and make sure we have those kind of we are spaced out and social distancing and stuff. And it kind of felt, for a moment, like sometimes it felt almost like it was a natural thing for us to come back, and felt almost like normal. Like never felt fully normal, but it felt almost normal. So those times I kind of thought, okay, well, it's very easy apparently to go back. We cannot do. There are things that we have to do. They have to be physically in the office for some things, and you know what? It is easier. Like, and when I compare it, some things are easier. Basically easier to do from the office. And I had those kind of clashing, kind of perspectives of like, okay, well, so yes, it worked well working from remotely, but then it also worked very well, and maybe sometimes even better working from the office. And it was so easy to go back to this like temporarily. So I actually don't know if I agree that I don't think things will get fully back to normal, but I do think, and I think there was a huge change, and some people will just not want to go back to the office ever, and they will learn actually to be more productive at home. And what you said about your example of the Second World War and how things change after that, also remember in people's personal lives, you will get used to having your life running in a certain way. If you have children, for example, childcare might be so much easier if you're able to work from home. Also, if you're like a part-timer, if you're a part-time mom, parent, it might be easier. And I don't think we'll be able to go completely back to what we used to have. But I don't think we'll be completely changed, if it makes sense, because of how easy, how natural it is. It's so natural working face to face with people. I don't know how has it been at the university? Have you guys been doing like in terms of being in an actual campus and face to face learning and stuff? How has it been for you?
I mean, it's been difficult. It's not easy because suddenly it's like live paradigm shift. Suddenly we are told that go home and then start teaching from home without any kind of resource and technical help. And then we just try to scramble through. Throughout this whole process. So you can see now I know how to edit video. I never thought this way, and the skills I have learned, it's just like self-learning, basically self-learning. Yeah. And I think millions of people actually did the same thing, like me, extra something else. It just something happened, and it forced us to do something to just make ourselves alive, perhaps. So these are the good things. But I think if we accepted the whole science situation in a more, practical, pragmatic way, then we can actually go through this whole phase more easily and, in a kind way, rather than this very disruptive and lots of bad faith politics on the ground. That can protract the situation, but with me, that can be a good news as well, because if you compare the Second World War scenario, that can change the whole society permanently, paradigm shift, which can be good for the planet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All those cars not driving anymore to work. Yeah, totally. I really am interested in seeing what's going to happen, because when you think about it, it's been almost 2 years, right, of this, and I think everyone is aware that kind of the Scottish government's approach has been, at least in my workplace, they've been very kind of careful about coming back to the offices and just making sure that we didn't have outbreaks of COVID, just also conscious, there are some colleagues who may be vulnerable it's just not safe for them to work from the office. I'll be really interested in seeing how this develops in the next, I even think like the next 5 years, because that's how long I think it's going to take, if not longer, unfortunately. Because given this is the second year in a row we're kind of going through this, I don't think next winter will be fully back in offices, to be honest. But it's my personal view. But I don't see this happening. Like for the next 3, 4, 5 years, I think we'll be going through very kind of similar scenarios. And I wonder if when you're talking about this, potentially huge change, I wonder if it will be basically the employees, the staff members who will make those decisions for companies. Because people will get used to a certain way of working, and they'll just push for it to continue.
It's quite funny because I'm reading this article in the Slate magazine. So there's like new trend now. All the managers are complaining that they're putting lots of advertisement for that, for the job offers, and hardly anyone applied for them.
Oh, interesting.
So these are like more physical, like come to the office, like all those things. So suddenly, people are retracting from those like positions.
Okay.
But you can see like in the beginning, all the protests going on the street, everyone was so keen to go back to the office. I really want to go back to my work. Like, for my left politics, I was really, kind of asking that, what kind of work you really want to go back? Not £10 an hour?
Yeah.
What's the use of this? So perhaps this is the time we can think about those things. Are these jobs actually, really need those jobs? No.
Yeah, but I think there will be, and I can see obviously some businesses kind of really losing out, that they're the biggest losers of the pandemic, right? Like, and also because of our kind of attitudes changing to certain things, and like people are, not going out as much and stuff. But I think that there'll be places that will need to close. But I wonder if that brings, maybe new opportunities as well for other places to open. But I know what you mean. I think what I found like what I think has been most challenging is all those sectors that we really rely on, like, kind of the health sector, and also like the care and social care sector. I just think they've been doing such an amazing job. They're not very well paid, unfortunately. Many people there. Not sure if they're like as appreciated as it should be. And I wonder if, how many people will actually be interested in joining those sectors in the future, because of how like difficult, it is. Those jobs are difficult, but also, because of COVID, like you have all those worries. Will they be applying for those jobs? Will people want to train? I don't know what it's like now, when it comes to degrees at Dundee, if they're like any of the kind of health degrees, if people are still applying, if they're popular or not really. Maybe some people feel more motivated. Maybe they are really thinking, oh my God, this is what I want to be doing. I at least I hope so, that the pandemic has made that, maybe made them think this is a very meaningful job and I want to be doing it. But yeah, it's just kind of a lot of kind of scary things actually when you think about it, because we don't know what's going to happen to the economy and what kind of impact this is going to have if it's a long-term thing, which appears to be pretty long-term. But for those of your students who are, I suppose, kind of maybe about to graduate this year, well, next year, I suppose, or this academic year, I suppose I wanted to mention that some opportunities that they can maybe apply for. So there are a lot of opportunities in the civil service, and at least I've worked there for 5 years, and I'm been really happy I think it's a great place to work. It's quite difficult to get in, but I think once you're in, also, there's so many opportunities to actually work in a variety of teams on so many different subjects. So even if your first job you get is maybe something you're interested in, but maybe it's not something you want to work forever in, that's not how the civil service works. There's really a lot of movement. So there are a couple of programs that I wanted to mention. So there's this graduate development program that the Scottish government does. I think I haven't done it myself, but I've heard a lot of positive things from people who have done it. It's a 4-year program. I think the past couple of years, what's really interesting is they give you a job in a team for 6 months. They move you somewhere else for another 6 months, and so on. So you have like 4 different jobs in the first 2 years, I believe. And I think that is so fascinating because you can really see a lot of the governments, because if you're going to 4 completely different locations, departments. So, and then you have a final 2 years, I think you're doing two 12 months, 12-month placement. So I think they always open this up to applications like in the first half of the year. So I would just really, tell your students to just make sure they look out for those. And I can share a link to this after. After this. Yeah. And there's also another thing, which is the UK government's fast stream. And a lot of people would have heard of it, people who are interested in the civil service. So also, I don't think they're open for applications at the moment. I think they normally, if I'm not mistaken, they normally open in the second half of the year. So if you're too late if you don't have time in the first half of 2022 to apply for the Scottish government thing, definitely I recommend applying to Fast Stream as well. Again, I can share a link to the website, but they have a lot of different opportunities. It's a similar. I'm not as familiar with it as I am with the Scottish government version, but basically it's also about moving. I don't think you stay in one place for longer than 6 or 12 months. So it really gives you that great, kind of good idea of what is out there, what opportunities there are in government. I've been able to get that. I worked, last couple of years, I worked in the First Minister's questions team, preparing the First Minister for her appearances in Parliament on Thursdays. And I've been able to work with a lot of people across the government. And I think, although it was just working in one team, it was so great to communicate and cooperate with all those different teams. Gave me a great understanding of what's out there. I worked with colleagues from justice, health, transport, education, external affairs and things like that. So such an interesting experience. So I would definitely recommend any of your students, or post-students, ex-students, to apply for a job in the civil service.
Because I'm like aware of the time. I'll just take a couple of minutes. So Libby is still okay for another 10 minutes?
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to the students who are just finishing their undergrad degree? So this is the time, because I saw that was the time you were preparing yourself for the big life.
What advice I would, it might sound funny, because I would take a deep breath in and have a proper think about their areas of interest, what they want to be doing. I think the biggest issue I had was I just didn't know what I wanted, even though I really enjoyed studying, and then it was almost done. I was almost done with it, and I thought, what am I going to do now? I actually don't know. I knew I didn't want to do another degree at the time. I really wanted to get some work experience. So I've looked for paid traineeships and graduate programs, and I would always recommend that. I don't know what a situation is like now because of Brexit, but at the time I was able to apply for traineeships at EU agencies. and I would definitely, and there are paid traineeships, which helps when you're a student or you're just kind of graduating. So I would recommend some of the EU agencies, like I worked at Europol. So I would definitely look into that if they have anything coming up next year. I know because of the pandemic, I don't know what the situation is at the moment, but there's a website, I think a European Union website, which kind of shows you all of the traineeships. So I would look at that. But yeah, just have a think about, do you want to get work experience, or are you more, want to stay in the academics? Do you want to do another degree? I think answering that question helps, even if you don't know where you want to work. As long as you know you want to get experience, that will already help you to start applying for graduate programs. So that's the advice I think I would give.
Did you do any postgrad degree after finishing?
I actually didn't. Because I've had a job pretty much since I finished. So when I graduated, I think in May or June, and then by August I was at Europol doing a traineeship, and after that, for 6 months, and after that I did another one at Frontex, and which is another EU agency, and then after that I got a job where there's this kind of graduate program at an improvement service. It's this organization in Scotland here, and so I've actually had jobs since graduating. I wasn't without a job for more than just a few weeks, and I never really kind of stopped and thought, I should go back. I am now thinking it would be nice to go and do a degree, but I just need to figure out what it is. And that would be helpful for me to do, because if I decide I want to go back, it has to be something really meaningful, something that I will really be able to use in my career.
Can you take a break from your career that I will study?
Yes, that's another really positive thing about being in the civil service. In the whole of the UK civil service, you're able to do a career break. Okay. I can't remember the rules exactly, but I think you can do it up to 3 years, but don't quote me on that because I'm not, I can't remember. But it's definitely a great opportunity. So yes, you could. So if you stay up, if you wanted to study full time, you could do that. But also I know of a few people who are studying part-time, doing a postgrad degree and just working at the same time, or working part-time and doing the degree part-time. So it's possible anyways to do that.
Because the way I see you, because you are in a very, very privileged position now, very close to all those, big leaders, big policymakers, and all those heavyweights. This will help to, guide your career trajectory in a very positive way. You might end up with 10 Downing Street chief of staff. I wouldn't go that far, but no, definitely I have to say, especially the last couple of years, I've been thinking more and more about doing something. But I think the biggest issue, I assume it's a similar issue that your students are having, is answering that question. What would be most helpful? What's the thing? What's the kind of main thing I should be doing? What should I focus on? I wouldn't want to just go back to university just for the sake of it, because I think it never ends well if it's just about getting another diploma or something like that. I don't think it would not be worth it for me. I think it has to be really something that I will feel passionate about and that will help me progress. And it's such a difficult decision to make, at least for me at the moment. But I've been thinking more and more about it. Just last question. What do you do in your free time? What kind of hobbies you have?
I do a lot of walking with my dog, my big German Shepherd, Akita Inu, of course. And I actually do a lot of baking and cooking. I'm a big fan of baking cakes and also giving them to people. That's what I enjoy most, actually, when people eat my cakes. So I used to bring cakes to work. Before the pandemic, I would bring cakes to work a lot. Unfortunately, the last year and a half, I've not been able to do that. So my husband has not really been that happy because he had to eat a lot of cake. And he keeps saying, "Oh, it's too much. Need to lose some weight now." But yeah, so I'm hoping we can go back to the office at some point, so I can go back to giving people my cakes.
Oh, Monika, thank you so much. You made some really good time for me. I really enjoyed the whole conversation.
Thank you. Really nice to catch up with you.
But it's not the last time. I'll bring you back again.
No, I hope you I hope you get a lot of sleep over the next week or 2 weeks before you go back. And it was great to catch up with you. And I hope you have a lovely new year when it comes.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.